All right, let's go for a walk. As you know, Cwic Show is the official sponsor for Go and Do Travel. And one of my favorite trips with Go and Do Travel is the Momentum Cruises. The Momentum Cruises are really something because you have hundreds of Latter-day Saints that are on this ship together, listening to amazing talks, presentations, amazing entertainment, and you have a chance to really mix and mingle with like-minded people and make a lot of new friends. Hundreds of other Latter-day Saints. It's really a very unique experience. You can go and find out more about the Momentum Cruises at cwicmedia.com, cwicmedia.com, and go up to the top, trips and events, and scroll down to Momentum. These are in January and February 2025, one on the West Coast in Mexico, one on the East Coast in the Caribbean. Would love to see you there. All right. See, I'm walking through a botanical garden here in the desert. So there's a lot of different cactus. You can see the fruit here, the cactus fruit. That is something that we used to eat in Mexico quite a bit when I was on my mission. So you would pull this fruit, put it into a blender, throw some sugar in it, and it's pretty tasty actually, especially these red ones. A lot better than the green ones. I want to talk about something that I hear a lot, that we get a lot in culture, in our Mormon culture, so to speak, that I want to address and probably push back on quite a bit. When I was younger, I used to hear some criticizing of saying, I know the church is true. And that has continued through today and even gotten to be a bigger deal, I think, right? Where it's like, no, you can't say, I know the church is true. No one can say, I know the church is true. But I'm going to push back on that a little bit. And I'm not necessarily with kids. I think that with kids, it's probably the case that they ought to be taught to speak more from the heart about what they actually know, what they've felt, what are good things. You know, I understand you're kind of training to some degree with kids, but you know, what I've come to believe is that it's best to help them speak in a way that is based on their own experiences, right? I think that's a very big positive thing. But as for myself, as an example, I know the church is true. I can say that. And we think in a modern Western world and a scientific world that means, okay, I've got this proof, right? This absolute physical, and it is a physical proof, right, that we're speaking of, that the church is true. And I don't believe that that's the way it works at all. To know is to have a knowledge. And I do have a knowledge of this, right? I want to go back to Hebrews 11:1, right? The famous scripture on faith, which says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. I, unlike some people, believe that faith is based on evidence. That is knowledge. It's based on knowledge. It's not some blind, faith idea that's completely nebulous, that you just decide you're going to believe on something. That to me is a mistake, to think that faith is simply belief. It's not. And if you think it is, then my opinion, you're wrong. And so faith is something that is built on evidence. If you go to Alma 32, you will see that this is exactly like the scientific formula, where he says that you need to try it out. In fact, he uses the term experiment. Use this experiment and see if it doesn't work. See if the tree, if you don't nurture it, if it doesn't grow within you. And I believe that 100%. You have to prove these things. You've got to try them out for yourself and gain your own knowledge about these things. So I can say that the church is true, and I can say that I have a testimony and a knowledge that Joseph Smith is a prophet, that the Book of Mormon is true, right? These are things that the temple is an essential doctrine and practice for salvation. These are things I know because I have gone through them. I have that experience and a familiarity with those things. That's a knowledge. So I have no problem. In fact, I believe we should lean into it even more, as long as that's what we actually have experienced and have that knowledge of, right? If not, then talk about things you do know. Talk about things that you have had an experience with. And you know, I think the mistake comes when we push things and everybody says, I know this to be true, and let's talk about what you know experientially, what you have put together in your mind through study or through the Spirit, etc. Right? But secondly, you know, if you go to Ether 319, which is a temple experience, if you read it closely, that the brother of Jared is having up on the mountain with the Savior. Here's what 319 says: and because of the knowledge of this man, he could not be kept from beholding within the veil. Okay, because of the knowledge of this man, he does have a knowledge. We all gain a knowledge as we go through life. We gain an experience and an understanding of things. And if we look at faith properly, then we take principles that we learned with the gospel and we actually prove them. We actually try them out and say, what are the results going to be? You know, and what if I go away from all of these things and these orders? What does my life look like? Those are, you know, that's the idea of by their fruits ye shall know them. And I believe that's true. That's a knowledge. Ye shall know. By the fruits ye shall know. I think that's a very important thing to see. And lastly, about talking about the true church. I know the church is true. I think that this is also true. If I look at Doctrine and Covenants 130, which says that this is the only true and living church upon the face of the whole earth. I believe that. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't truths in other religions or cultures or anything else. I do interfaith work. I think that that's an important thing. I do believe that, and there's a lot of goodness out there. But it is the true church, and it is the only true church in the sense that it is the only church that has the authority. It is the only church that has the priesthood. And so I also don't have an issue with anybody saying that and saying that it is the true church, right? So a knowledge and a true church, I think that if we parse that out, break that down, take a look at it closely, I think that for me, I lean into that. And if I'm bearing my testimony, I'm going to lean into those things and explain why, right? Okay, I got to figure out how to do this without that sun hitting us too hard here. And watch out for these Palo Verdes because they are very, very thorny. Since moving here to Arizona 23 years ago, I have had my fill of cutting down Palo Verde branches. They grow like weeds, these trees. The mesquites and the Palo Verdes just grow like weeds. Now, I want to interject something here from my friend Stephen Bishop. He's an author, wrote a book called Putting on Christ. We are giving this book away for free. If you look in the description box, there's a link there. You can click on it. It's a wonderful book about being born again and putting on the image of Christ. Free, absolutely free. Go to the description box, click on the link, and you will get your free copy of Putting on Christ. All right, now, one of the last videos I did was on polygamy, and got a lot of controversy there. There was a number of interesting comments. There are people that are very invested in believing that Joseph Smith did not practice polygamy or believing that he did on both sides. It was a brand new experience for me, really. I have never seen this with this issue before. Just how stir, I wasn't trying to stir the pot. I really wasn't. But that's what happened. And so I want to just talk about a couple of things here. First of all, a couple of the arguments that are being made just from fresh eyes on this, because I am not an expert on this at all. I don't claim to be. But just from some fresh eyes and looking at a couple of the arguments, if you are one who believes that Joseph Smith did not practice polygamy, just a couple of things. Number one, I saw a lot of people, not just a couple, a lot of people that have contacted me or that have been in the comment section that have said the following: well, if you believe that Joseph Smith practiced polygamy, that must be that you desperately want to practice polygamy also. That is a horrible argument. I'm just telling you, it's a horrible argument. Believing that someone did something or had to do something does not mean that they want the same thing. So I'm just telling you, I would recommend that if that is on the side that you're on, don't use that argument and don't make those statements, because that's going to turn people off completely, because it's not true. There are very few people with any experience in life, men especially included, that want anything like polygamy. I think that's just ridiculous. Don't make that argument. Not smart, right? You can believe something that may have happened in the past without saying that that's something that you want. So just think about that a little bit. Secondly, there are a faction of those individuals, unfortunately for those that don't go along with this, but are on the side that Joseph Smith didn't practice polygamy, that are pushing against Brigham Young was a prophet, are pushing against Russell M. Nelson is a prophet, are pushing against temple ordinances. I know that's not everyone, all right? I'm not saying that, but that's not a good look. I mean, not for me. I am one that believes that Joseph Smith did practice polygamy, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. I mean, that's probably nuanced, but if you're pulling away from those areas, I am a faithful member of the church, not because I am a puppet, not because I want to just follow along like a sheep, but because I believe, but because I have faith in certain things. And I'm going to fight to defend the church. I sustain the brethren. I don't agree with everything that they do. I am part of a group of fallible individuals all the way to the top, right? But I am going to support the church. I'm going to fight for the church. And if you're coming in telling me that the temple, along with with Joseph Smith not practicing polygamy, the temple doesn't exist, shouldn't exist, never was a thing with Joseph Smith, now you've got me on a different plane, because that is not true. That is absolutely not true. And I mean, the temple is everywhere. It's in the scriptures. It's everywhere in the scriptures. It's all throughout. It's the first thing that Moroni really is talking to Joseph Smith about when he visits him in his room, and he's quoting Malachi 4. He's going right to it before Joseph Smith has even seen the gold plates. So I'm going to Egypt tomorrow, and all over the place there in Egypt, you're going to find the ritual embrace, you're going to find the Abrahamic covenant, the passage through different degrees, so many, the garb of the priests, I mean, so many different things that have nothing to do with a more modern time, that have nothing to do with the Masons, that have nothing to do with the tropes that are thrown out there to criticize the practice of the temple. It's ridiculous. So that's an issue for me. I'm just telling you personally. There is a faction of those individuals that seem to go along with this idea that couple those things, right? Again, I'm not saying that's everyone, but that, I think, is an issue. And what's interesting to me is, and nobody talks about this, but these are teachings from the reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, now the Community of Christ. And somehow I think that a lot of these thoughts and study and research for their position, and they have every right to have that position, but for their position has leaked through the internet and has gotten to a number of people, and a number of people have grabbed onto these things. All right, so there's a few major issues, right? Number one, Joseph Smith never practiced polygamy. Number one, right? Number two, Brigham Young is not a prophet. That would go down through Joseph Smith III, right? And number three, temples aren't real. And so those are teachings from a different church. And that's fine if that's what you believe. And you know, but I will tell you in the comment section, I've been doing this for several years. And you'll have people that are a member of the Community of Christ Church that will come in acting, because they'll talk about the Book of Mormon, they'll talk about Joseph Smith, etc., acting as if they are LDS, Latter-day Saints, and then little by little reveal that they are not, right? And they start preaching these things against Brigham Young, against temples, against Joseph Smith ever having polygamy. And so it kind of turns into a big mess. It's a problem. And I'm just throwing these things out there so that people are aware that, look, you've got to kind of find the signal among the noise here, right? There are a lot of motivations from people here. There are also a number of people that just don't like the church or have a problem with the church. And they may be, and again, this has nothing to do with politics. It's people on the left, it's people on the right, and they want to push against the Q15, right? And they've got a problem with them. Okay, right? That you've got a problem. I get it. But when you start going in and trying to break down these other doctrines, I just want people to be aware of this. Know that those people are out there, and sometimes they don't always lead with their true intentions and their true background. Now, having said that, you know, it's interesting with polygamy because, you know, when someone talks to me about polygamy, I'll go over it and they'll ask specific questions about it. And again, I'm not an expert on this at all, but I'll typically go back and talk about Joseph Smith and say, look, I mean, there's really not a whole lot of evidence that Joseph ever consummated any of these sealings that he had with others. And, you know, maybe one, maybe a couple, but it doesn't look like there's much of this at all. And maybe none, right? Maybe none. So that's something to keep in mind. You know, if he was practicing polygamy, what does that really look like? What does that really mean in the life of Joseph Smith, right? Secondly, the knowledge of the sealing and temple work was raw. It was very new. And so there's a general idea from what I've seen. If you experts in church history, if you want to correct me on this, please do. But there is this idea, apparently, looks like there is, of early church members just wanting to get sealed, not necessarily married, right? Not what we would call maybe temple marriage, but I need to get sealed to somebody else who's already sealed. So you had all of these people getting sealed, and that includes men, getting sealed to like Joseph Smith or Brigham Young and others, people who were sealed, because the idea is, well, the family of God must all be sealed through the temple ordinances and sealings back to God himself. And so the idea of the order of family here on earth inside of that doctrine of sealing is a little ambiguous, I believe. And so we don't know exactly how that worked with them and what they did. Now, obviously with Brigham Young, that completely changed. He had numerous wives. He obviously consummated those marriages with those other women. So there is a difference. There's certainly a clear difference on how that manifested, right? How that was working. So I think people ought to keep that in mind and understand that. Now, again, back to the other side, It's not a good reason for me. I had someone say to me, and I get this kind of thing all the time. It's not that big a deal to me, but someone said to me who had been listening to me for quite some time, boy, I've got a totally different view of Greg now, right? Because he now believes in this satanic practice, that Joseph Smith would do these satanic things. And, again, bad argument. Let's go back and look at Abraham. And this is what polygamy is oftentimes, in fact, compared to, is the sacrifice of Abraham and Sarah. But Abraham is told to kill his own son. Right? Is that worse than polygamy? Is that satanic? There are trials that we need to be put through. And if I think that Joseph Smith was put through some type of a trial, or the early church was put through some type of a trial, some members put through these trials, that doesn't mean I believe it's a satanic practice. I think it's a horrible practice. I do. It is a horrible, messy pot of difficult. But that doesn't mean that I want it. And that doesn't mean that I believe it's satanic. I think that's a bad argument too. And I think what those that believe that polygamy never really should have happened, that it was not directed by God, I think that in looking at that side, you're trying to steelman your own position by putting blame and evil on those that disagree with you. Just my thought on this. I wouldn't do that. That's, let's just look at the record. Let's look at what we believe. My issue with it also is, look, I don't believe that it would be satanic if that's what God commanded. And I do believe that Russell M. Nelson is a prophet, that he has the keys. And I'm going to stick to that. So does that mean I'm not open to things? No, I am open to things. But I don't like the fruits of some of the things and motivations of some of the things that I see from those that argue that of what's been called polygamy deniers. And for me, again, ultimately, if you're going against what the brethren are going to be saying, that's going to be a problem. That's a very high value for a lot of members of the church. And that doesn't mean that they're just sheep. And that doesn't mean, that they've looked into it and they've studied this completely. I certainly haven't. But I have really, really good reason to support and sustain the brethren. Polygamy is a very sticky subject. Just some of my thoughts on this. Thanks for listening.